The words still stung a curse that refused to fade. "You are banned from this house on Christmas Eve, unless you apologize to your brother." My father, Raymond Carter, CEO of Carter Logistics, stood in the middle of our company's main lobby, his face twisted with fury, his voice booming across the cold floor, echoing sharply where dozens of employees pretended not to stare. The Christmas decorations hanging from the ceiling seemed to mock me, their cheerful red and green lights flickering against the cold reality of what was happening. Tyler smirked from his position behind our father, his arms crossed over his expensive suit, his expression dripping with satisfaction. His wife Olivia stood beside him, dabbing at her perfectly dry eyes with a silk handkerchief, playing the victim role she had perfected over the years. She was wearing an expensive designer dress, the kind she always wore to show off to everyone. I looked at the three of them standing there like a united front against everything I had ever been, everything I had ever given to this family and this company, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not despair, something colder, something that had been waiting for this moment for 7 long years. "Fine," I said. That was all. Just one word. No argument, no tears, no begging for understanding. My father blinked, clearly expecting a different reaction. Tyler's smirk faltered for just a moment. Olivia's fake crying stopped mid-sob. I turned and walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking against the floor in a steady rhythm that betrayed none of the storm brewing inside me. Behind me, I heard the whispers of employees who had witnessed the entire humiliating spectacle. "Did you see that he just publicly banned his own daughter? Emma basically built our entire back-end system. Without her, this place would fall apart. Why does the CEO treat her like she is nothing?" The elevator doors closed, cutting off their voices, and I leaned against the cold metal wall, letting out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. Asheville, North Carolina was draped in its finest winter white that December. The mountains surrounding our city wore caps of fresh snow, and every storefront window glowed with holiday lights. The Carter family estate, a sprawling mansion that had been featured in architectural magazines, was being prepared for our annual Christmas celebration. A 12-foot tree, catered dinner for 50 guests, the kind of holiday gathering that made other families envious. But I had never truly belonged to that picture-perfect image. From the time I was old enough to understand, I learned that the Carter family operated on a simple hierarchy. Tyler, my older brother by 3 years, stood at the top. He was the golden child, the heir apparent, the son who would carry the Carter name into the future. Our father made no secret of his favoritism. Tyler received the best education, the internships at prestigious firms, the corner office at Carter Logistics, before he had proven he could manage anything more complex than his own ego. And me, I was the daughter who should have learned to cook, marry well, and support her brother's success from the shadows. I had a different plan. When Carter Logistics faced a catastrophic security breach 5 years ago, one that threatened to expose client data and destroy our reputation, I was the one who rebuilt the entire system from the ground up. I wrote the code. I designed the architecture. I created the software that now ran every aspect of our operations, from warehouse management to fleet tracking to the smart home system that controlled my father's beloved mansion. But I was not stupid enough to hand over my work without protection. I registered everything under my own company, Carter Systems. Every line of code, every patent, every licensing agreement bore my name. Carter Logistics did not own the technology that kept it running. They leased it from me through a contract my father had signed without reading, because he never imagined his invisible daughter could create anything of value. That contract was set to expire at exactly 1 minute past midnight on Christmas Day. The charity event 2 weeks earlier had been the final straw. Olivia had been named chair of the Holiday Logistics Drive, a project that provided transportation for underprivileged families to receive donated goods. In reality, I had done all the work. I coordinated the routes, secured the volunteer drivers, and solved the puzzle of delivering thousands of packages across 3 counties in a single weekend. At the celebration dinner, the master of ceremonies praised Olivia's dedication and vision. She stood at the podium accepting applause while I sat at the back table watching my work be stolen once again. I should have stayed silent. I had stayed silent so many times before. But something broke inside me that night, and when a reporter approached our table asking about the logistics operation, I simply said, "Actually, I handled the coordination." 5 words. 5 honest words that set off a firestorm. Olivia burst into theatrical tears, claiming I had humiliated her in front of the media. Tyler rushed to comfort his wife, shooting daggers at me with his eyes. My father pulled me aside and hissed that I had embarrassed the family. No one asked if what I said was true. No one cared that I had spent 3 weeks barely sleeping to make the event successful. The only thing that mattered was that I had disrupted the careful fiction that kept Olivia feeling important and Tyler looking competent. Now standing in the parking garage beneath Carter Logistics, I pulled out my phone and checked the countdown timer I had set weeks ago. Licensing renewal deadline, December 24th, 11:59 p.m. Tomorrow night, the system contract expires. If they haven't paid or renewed by midnight, everything I built will lock down and only I hold the keys. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Finally learned your place, little sister. Do not even think about showing up tomorrow unless you are ready to apologize on your knees." I smiled a cold expression that would have surprised anyone who knew the meek, accommodating Emma I had pretended to be for so many years. They wanted me gone. They wanted me to be silent. They wanted me to crawl back begging for forgiveness I did not owe. What they did not understand was that I was the foundation they had built their comfortable lives upon, and foundations have a way of crumbling when taken for granted. I drove through the snowy streets to my apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood far from the Carter estate. It was the only space that was truly mine, untouched by my family's expectations and judgments. On my kitchen table sat a folder from my lawyer, Madeline Young. Inside were the documents confirming what my family refused to acknowledge. I owned the systems. I owned the technology. I owned the very heartbeat of everything they valued. My laptop pinged with an email from Madeline. "Emma, the operating license for Carter Logistics expires at 12:01 a.m. on December 25th. If you choose not to renew, all systems will automatically enter secure lockdown mode. This is legally your right. Let me know your decision." I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my window watching the snow fall on the city below. Somewhere across town, my family was preparing for their perfect Christmas, confident that their obedient daughter would come crawling back with apologies. They had banned me from their home. They had humiliated me in front of our employees. They had spent years taking credit for my work while treating me like hired help. Tomorrow night, when the clock struck midnight, they would discover what it felt like to be locked out of everything they thought they owned. I was not going to destroy my family. I was simply going to stop saving them from themselves, and that I realized as I watched the first stars appear in the winter sky was the most powerful form of justice there was. The snow fell harder as I drove home that evening, each flake catching the glow of streetlights before disappearing into the white blanket covering everything. My windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm, and I let my mind drift back through the years, through all the moments that had led me to this crossroads. I had always been invisible to my father. He only saw me when he needed work done or problems solved. The favoritism started early. Raymond Carter believed leadership was passed from father to son. Tyler received the best of everything: education, internships, the corner office. When he looked at me, he saw an obligation. I refused to accept that role. I earned scholarships to study computer science. I graduated with honors while my family attended Tyler's mediocre graduation ceremony. No one came to mine. When I returned home, I started in the lowest position at Carter Logistics. I quietly fixed every mistake Tyler made and solved every crisis he created. The catastrophic security breach 5 years ago was my moment. A ransomware attack crippled our entire operation. I came to him with a proposal. Give me access to the servers. Give me 3 months. Let me rebuild everything from scratch better than before. He laughed again, but desperation made him willing to try anything. He signed a hastily drawn contract, never imagining I would use that authority to protect myself. The contract that detailed eCarter Systems ownership, a document they signed without reading, was the silent proof of my worth. I worked 20-hour days. I wrote code until my eyes burned. I created a system so elegant and efficient that it became the heartbeat of the company, handling everything from inventory tracking to smart home integration. For 5 years, I was the engine they never saw. I sent repeated reminders about the licensing agreement renewal, but Tyler's response still burned in my memory. The system belongs to the family. There is no contract needed between us. The invoices I submitted were dismissed. I realized during that charity event that in this family the truth never mattered as much as saving face. They preferred the carefully constructed fiction that kept Olivia feeling important and Tyler looking competent. Now sitting in my apartment with a cup of hot chocolate warming my hands, I opened my laptop and checked the system dashboard. Everything was still running smoothly. License expiration. December 24th, 11:59 p.m. Renewal not received. I clicked through to the automatic sequence that would trigger at midnight. When the license expired, every system would enter safe mode, not a shutdown, but a pause protecting data and suspending all user access pending verification from me. The smart locks at the mansion would refuse entry. The fleet vehicles would disable their route management. The warehouse doors would seal. My phone buzzed with another email from Tyler, brief and cruel. "Remember your place, Emma. You have always been the weak link in this family." I knew since they ignored my emails that this day would come. I was not going to apologize. I was not going to beg for a seat at a table where I had never been welcome. I closed my laptop. They had made their choice. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Angela Chen, the senior accountant. "Emma, something strange is happening with the financial records. Some transactions have been deleted or altered. I think Tyler might be involved. Can we talk after the holidays?" This was bigger than a family drama. This was a fraud. I saved Angela's number and typed a quick response. "Send me whatever you have. I will look into it." The snow continued falling outside my window, soft and relentless. Tomorrow, my family will face the consequences of their arrogance. I drove 45 minutes through the snow to reach the Carter estate. Not because I had changed my mind about apologizing, but because my mother had called with tears in her voice, begging me to at least try to keep peace during the holidays. My mother was a complicated figure in my life. She had married Raymond Carter when she was young and beautiful, before she understood that his love came with conditions, and his respect had to be earned through submission. Over the years, I watched her shrink, becoming smaller and quieter, until she was barely a presence in her own home. She never defended me against my father's favoritism, but I never blamed her entirely. How could I? She was as much a victim of his expectations as I was. So I drove through the winding roads, watching the estate grow larger through my windshield. Its windows blazing with warm light that promised comfort and belonging I knew I would not find inside. The mansion looked like something from a holiday movie. Garlands wrapped the porch railings. A massive wreath hung on the front door. Through the windows, I could see the 12-foot Christmas tree my father insisted on every year, decorated with ornaments collected over generations of Carters, who had all been raised to believe they were better than everyone else. I parked in the circular driveway and walked to the entrance, steeling myself for whatever reception awaited me. Olivia opened the door. She stood there in an expensive designer dress, her hair perfectly styled. Her smile was thin and just polite, but I could tell she wasn't happy at all. "Well, well, you actually came." Olivia stood leaning against the doorframe, keeping just enough space for me to stop and face her, waiting for me to speak first. "Your father said you could only come inside if you apologize. Are you ready to do that?" Behind her, I could hear the sounds of the party. Laughter, clinking glasses. The voice of my father holding court, entertaining the guests with stories of his business success. "I came to see my family for Christmas," I said evenly. Olivia's smile sharpened. "Your family? That is rich. You have spent your whole life making things difficult for us, and now you want to play the victim." I felt the old urge to argue, to defend myself, to explain all the ways her version of reality was twisted and wrong. But what would be the point? Olivia had been rewriting history since the day she married Tyler, casting herself as the heroine and me as the villain in every story. "May I come in?" She stepped aside with an exaggerated flourish. By all means, just remember that your place is in the kitchen helping your mother, not out here with the real guests. I walked past her into the warmth of the house I had grown up in, but never felt at home in. The main room was filled with people I half recognized, business associates of my father, wealthy neighbors, the kind of crowd that made everything feel like a performance. My mother caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small, apologetic smile before being pulled into conversation by someone's wife. I made my way toward her, but Tyler intercepted me. "So you decided to show up after all." He stood with a champagne glass in hand, his expensive watch catching the light. "I hope you are planning to behave yourself tonight. Olivia is still upset about what you did at the charity event." "I only told the truth." Tyler's jaw tightened. "The truth is, whatever we decide, it is Emma. That is how families work. You support each other even when it means staying quiet about things that do not matter." "My contributions do not matter." He laughed, a sound so dismissive it cut deeper than any insult. "Your contributions, you fiddle with computers. Anyone could do what you do. Dad only lets you hang around because it would look bad to cut you off completely." I opened my mouth to respond, but my father's voice boomed across the room. "Emma, come here." The command in his tone made several guests turn to look. I walked toward him with my head held high, refusing to show how much I dreaded whatever public performance he had planned. Raymond Carter stood by the fireplace, surrounded by admirers. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered with silver hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. In his world, he was a titan of industry, a self-made success story. The fact that his daughter had rebuilt his company's entire technological infrastructure was a detail he had carefully erased from every version of his history. "This is my daughter," he announced to the group, "the one I was telling you about." I braced myself. "She works in our IT department," he continued. "Keeps the computers running. Not glamorous work, but someone has to do it." One of the guests, a woman dripping with diamonds, smiled politely. "How nice that you found something useful for her." My father nodded, as if I were a charity case he had generously supported. "We believe in keeping family close, even when they do not have much to contribute to the business side of things." The words landed like blows, each one precisely aimed at everything I had ever accomplished. I stood there smiling the plastic smile I had perfected over years of similar humiliations and waited for him to finish. "Now, Emma, I believe you have something to say to your brother and his wife." Everyone fell silent. The entire room was watching, waiting for me to deliver the apology that would restore order to my father's carefully constructed world. I looked at Tyler's smug expression. I looked at Olivia's expectant face. I looked at my father's eyes, hard as stone, daring me to defy him. "No," I said quietly, "I do not." The silence stretched into something terrible. My father's face went red. "Emma, I am giving you one chance to make this right." "There is nothing to make right. I told the truth at the charity event. I did the work that Olivia took credit for. Apologizing for honesty is not something I am willing to do." Tyler stepped forward, his champagne sloshing. "You selfish, ungrateful—" "Tyler," my father's voice was ice. "I will handle this." He turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes I had never seen directed at me before. Not disappointment, not frustration. Pure, cold rage. "Until you are ready to apologize to your brother and his wife," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "you are no longer welcome in this house. Leave now, and do not come back until you have learned your place." The guests shifted uncomfortably. A few looked away, embarrassed to be witnessing such a scene. Others watched with the hungry interest of people who fed on drama. I took a breath, then another. "Goodbye, Father," I said. "Merry Christmas." I turned and walked out of the room, through the foyer, past the giant tree with its perfect ornaments, and out the front door into the cold December night. Behind me, I heard Tyler laugh. Finally, maybe now we can enjoy Christmas without her ruining everything. I got into my car and sat there for a long moment, watching the snow fall on the windshield. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something much more powerful. I pulled out my phone and called Madeline. "They want me gone," I said when she answered. They banned me from the house. Are you okay? I am fine. Better than fine, actually. I watched the lights of the mansion glowing in my rearview mirror. Activate the safe mode sequence. Let the license expire. I am sure. They made their choice. Now they can live with it. I ended the call and started my car. As I drove away from the Carter estate, I felt lighter than I had in years. The snow was falling harder now, covering the road in white, erasing the tracks I left behind. At midnight, when the systems locked down and the house went dark, they would understand what they had lost. Not a troublemaker, not a burden, not the weak link. They had lost the one person who knew how to keep everything running, and they had done it to themselves. I woke on Christmas morning to the sound of silence. This was the first Christmas morning that belonged entirely to me. I made coffee, slowly savoring each step of the ritual. The rich aroma filled my small kitchen. Outside, the city was waking up to a white Christmas. My phone sat on the counter screen dark. When I finally picked it up, the numbers made me catch my breath. The missed calls, 18 from my father, 22 from Olivia, 14 from Tyler, showed a clear escalation from confusion to anger. They were calling frantically, their voices full of alarm and frustration. I scrolled through the messages. The first timestamp was 12:03 a.m. I pictured the chaos, my father shouting, Tyler pounding on keypads that no longer recognized his codes. I sipped my coffee and watched the snow fall outside my window. There was no guilt in my heart, only a strange calm. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time I answered. Emma. My father's voice was hoarse. What have you done to my house? Good morning, Father. Merry Christmas. The locks are not working. The heating system shut down. Fix it immediately. I cannot do that. The operating license expired at midnight. The system remains in secure mode. I heard him breathing heavily. That is ridiculous. Everything you created belongs to Carter Logistics. You own the buildings. You never owned the software that runs them. That belongs to Carter Systems, and that belongs to me. I heard a crash. Your lawyers can contact mine. Her name is Madeline Young. In the meantime, I suggest you find some warm blankets. I ended the call. I made myself breakfast, eating slowly by the window. This was the first Christmas I could remember without the crushing weight of family obligation. Around mid-morning, I decided to pull up the system log directly from the secured connection on my laptop. I wasn't just checking status. I was looking for patterns. The system was running a final integrity check mandated before any full shutdown. I noticed a series of suspicious account access attempts, flagged and denied by my protocols, all tied to an internal CFO account. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Angela, the accountant who had contacted me the night before. Emma, have you seen what is happening at the company? Everything is locked down. No one can access the systems. I typed back, I am aware. It is related to the license expiration. Tyler is going crazy. He tried to get into the financial servers this morning, but his account has been suspended. Suspended by whom? The system flagged it automatically. Something about irregular activity on his account. I sat up straighter. The automated security protocols I had built included fraud detection algorithms. If Tyler had been manipulating financial records, the system would have noticed. Can you send me the alert logs? I asked. I spent the afternoon reviewing the data Angela managed to send me. Over the past 18 months, Tyler had been systematically skimming nearly $2 million from company accounts. The irony was almost poetic. As the sun began to set on Christmas Day, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold, I received one more message. This one was from the board of directors at Carter Logistics. Ms. Carter, we are aware of the current situation. We would like to request a meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss resolution options. I typed a brief response. I am available tomorrow morning. Please send the meeting details. Tomorrow, they would start to understand that this was about much more than a license agreement. The evening of Christmas Day settled over the city, muffling sound and light beneath layers of fresh snow. My phone had been buzzing all day, but I had stopped checking. Around 7 o'clock, I received a video call request from the family. Curiosity won out. I accepted the call. The screen filled with the chaotic living room of the Carter estate. Emergency lights cast everything in an eerie glow. Blankets were piled on the furniture. My father's silver hair was disheveled, but the fury in his eyes seemed duller, replaced by a deep exhaustion. "Emma!" My father leaned close to the camera, his voice barely holding its usual booming authority. "This has gone far enough. Fix this immediately." "Hello, Father. How is your Christmas going?" "The locks are not working. The heating system shut down." He continued his agitation, now quiet and contained. "We are trapped." "That is because you are," I said simply. "The system no longer recognizes you as authorized users." Tyler shoved into frame, his expensive suit rumpled. He tried to speak loudly, but his voice was tight and shaky. "You are insane. You cannot just lock us out." "I did not lock you out. The expired license triggered automatic security protocols." Olivia appeared wrapped in multiple layers of sweaters, her perfect hair a tangled mess. "We have children here, Emma. Your niece and nephew are freezing." That gave me pause. The heating system has an emergency mode that maintains a minimum safe temperature. I said, my voice softer now. "No one is in danger of freezing, but I understand your concern for the children." My father seized on the moment. "Then fix this. We will discuss everything after the holidays." "Discuss what? Will you continue to treat me like hired help? Whether Tyler continues to take credit for my work? Will Olivia continue to gaslight me?" The room on the other end went stone silent. Even the faint background whimpering stopped. "This is exactly the time," I stated, the calm in my voice contrasting sharply with the cold light illuminating their faces. "For the first time in your life, you are going to experience what it feels like when the person you take for granted stops showing up to save you." I saw the first glimmer of recognition in my father's eyes, not remorse, but dawning panic. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I want the truth. Ask Tyler about Carter West LLC. Ask him about the financial irregularities that have been flagged in the system over the past 18 months. Ask him why his account was automatically suspended." Tyler's face went pale. "The system does. It recorded everything, Tyler. The fraud detection algorithms I built were very thorough." My father turned slowly to face his son. Tyler's voice was a desperate, high-pitched denial. "She is lying. She is trying to destroy this family because she is jealous." "You have not accomplished anything," I said calmly. "You spent the last 2 years stealing from your own company. The systems recorded all of it." Olivia took a step back from her husband. The call descended into a frantic exchange of sharp, worried accusations among themselves, no longer directed at me. My father was shouting for everyone to calm down. "I will see you at the board meeting tomorrow," I said. I ended the call. The apartment felt very quiet. Looking at them now, cold and frightened and turning on each other, I felt pity. Not enough to rescue them, but enough to hope they might learn. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from my mother. "Emma, I am so sorry for everything. I should have spoken up." I read her words 3 times. At least my mother was finally acknowledging what she had witnessed. I typed back, "We will talk soon. I love you." Then I closed my eyes and listened to the silence of a Christmas night that marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. 6:42 in the morning. The timestamp glowed on my phone screen as I opened my eyes to another day of reckoning. Outside my window, the sky was still dark, but the first hints of dawn were beginning to color the horizon in shades of purple and gray. I had slept surprisingly well, the deep sleep of someone who had finally done what was necessary. My dashboard showed the countdown timer I had been monitoring for days, operating capacity remaining 10 hours. After that, the systems would shift from read-only mode to full lockdown. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing a navy suit. Today was not about impressing anyone. It was about standing my ground. The drive to Carter Logistics took 20 minutes. The parking lot was nearly full when I arrived, unusual for the day after Christmas. I could feel the tension the moment I walked through the front doors. Employees huddled in small groups, speaking in whispers. The main operations floor was in chaos. Monitors displayed error messages. Phones rang unanswered. The usually smooth hum of a well-run logistics company had been replaced by the frantic energy of a ship taking on water. A young man I recognized from the IT department rushed over to me. "Ms. Carter, thank God you are here. Nothing is working. The fleet management system is down. We cannot even process basic shipping orders. I am aware of the situation. Can you fix it? Your father has been trying to reach you. I will address everything in the meeting. For now, I need access to the server room." He hesitated. "Your father said no one should let you near the servers without his authorization." I met his eyes steadily. "Check the system administrator records. See whose name appears as the primary owner of all operating licenses." He pulled out his tablet. His face went pale. "E. Carter Systems," he read slowly. "Sole proprietor Emma Carter." "That is correct. Now, would you like to show me to the server room, or should I find it myself?" He showed me to the server room. The heart of Carter Logistics hummed around me as I walked through the rows of servers. Everything was functioning exactly as I had designed it to. The system was protecting itself from unauthorized users. My phone buzzed with a text from Madeline. "Board meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. Margaret Chen called twice this morning. She sounds worried." I typed back, "Tell her I will be there, and I will be bringing evidence." The morning passed in a blur. I documented everything the fraud detection system had flagged. Tyler's unauthorized transactions, the shell companies, the payments that had been rerouted to accounts with his wife's name on them. It was worse than I had initially suspected. Over 18 months, Tyler had siphoned nearly $2 million. Angela, the accountant, met me in a quiet conference room around noon. "This is going to destroy him," she said. "My father has been protecting Tyler his entire life. Maybe it is time he stopped." Angela shook her head. "The evidence is complicated. Tyler clearly orchestrated the scheme, but there are signatures and approvals that trace back to the CEO's office. Whether your father understood what he was signing or simply trusted his son without verifying anything, I cannot say." This changed everything. I had planned to expose Tyler's fraud while giving my father a chance to save face. "Are you saying my father was complicit in the fraud?" "I am saying the evidence is complicated. At minimum, he was negligent." I thought about the employees. They did not deserve to lose their jobs. "There has to be another option," I said. "If you as the owner of the operating systems came forward as a whistleblower, the company might be able to negotiate reduced penalties. The board could restructure and demonstrate good faith." "That would mean bringing down my brother and possibly my father." Angela looked at me with something like compassion. "Emma, they destroyed themselves. You are just turning on the lights." I spent the next hour alone trying to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. At 2:45, I gathered the documents and walked toward the boardroom. My father was already there, looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. Tyler sat beside him, barely concealed panic replacing his arrogance. The board members looked up as I entered. Now they were all looking at me with a mixture of hope and apprehension. I took my seat at the head of the table and opened my laptop. I had always imagined that the day I finally stood up to my family would be filled with tears and dramatic confrontations. I expected shouting matches and slammed doors, the kind of emotional explosions that defined our household dynamics for as long as I could remember. But sitting in the boardroom that afternoon, surrounded by people who were finally ready to listen, I felt only a profound calm. The storm had already raged. Now it was time for the rebuilding. Madeline arrived precisely at 3, briefcase in hand, her expression the perfect blend of professional and protective. She had been my lawyer for 3 years, ever since I quietly incorporated E. Carter Systems and began building the legal framework that would eventually give me the leverage I now possessed. "Before we begin," Margaret said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had served on corporate boards for decades, "I want to make something clear. This meeting is not about assigning blame or relitigating family disputes. It is about finding a path forward that protects this company and its employees." My father started to speak, but Margaret held up her hand. "Raymond, please. Let Emma present her information first." The next hour was the most surreal of my life. I walked the board through everything, the licensing agreements. They had never read the system architecture. They had never understood the fraud detection protocols that had captured Tyler's every transgression. I showed them the shell companies, the diverted payments, the altered records, the signature approvals that traced back to both Tyler and my father. With each revelation, I watched my father's face shift from defiance to denial to something approaching despair. Tyler beside him grew increasingly agitated, interrupting constantly with denials that grew less convincing as the evidence mounted. "These records are fabricated," Tyler insisted for the 10th time. "Emma has always been jealous of my position. She is doing this to destroy me." I turned to the board. "Every piece of data I have shown you is time-stamped and verified by the system's built-in audit protocols. These are not my interpretations or accusations. These are facts recorded by software designed to detect exactly this kind of activity." "Why would you build fraud detection into a logistics system?" Robert Williams asked. "Because I know my brother," I said simply. "I have watched him cut corners and take credit for others' work his entire life. When I built these systems, I knew they would eventually be in his hands. I wanted to make sure there was accountability." The room went silent. Margaret leaned forward. "Emma, what exactly are you proposing?" "I have 3 conditions for restoring the operating systems and preventing this situation from becoming a federal matter." "You cannot make demands," my father snarled. "You are my daughter. You work for this company. You do not get to dictate terms." Madeline spoke for the first time. "Actually, Raymond Emma does not work for Carter Logistics. She never has. She operates as an independent contractor through eCarter Systems. Your company has been licensing her technology for 5 years. That license expired 2 days ago. Currently, you have no legal right to use any of the systems keeping your operations functional." "That is absurd. I paid for those systems. You paid licensing fees, which you stopped paying 18 months ago. You also signed contracts acknowledging that all intellectual property rights belong to Emma's company. Would you like me to show you your signature?" My father's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I continued. "My first condition is a full independent audit of all financial records for the past 3 years. The results will be shared with the board and, if necessary, with federal authorities." Tyler shot to his feet. "You cannot be serious. My second condition is immediate restructuring of the executive leadership. Tyler will be removed from his position as CFO pending the audit results. My father will step down as CEO within 90 days, allowing the board to select a qualified replacement." "This is a coup," my father breathed. "You are staging a coup against your own family." "My third condition is a formal acknowledgement of my contributions to this company. Not for my ego, but because the employees deserve to know who built the systems they rely on every day. The lies end now." Margaret exchanged looks with the other board members. "And if we agree to these conditions, then I will restore the operating systems, immediately cooperate fully with any investigation, and work with the transition team to ensure minimal disruption to operations. And if we refuse," I met her eyes steadily, "then the systems remain locked. The evidence I have gathered goes directly to federal investigators, and Carter Logistics becomes a cautionary tale about what happens when companies are built on foundations of fraud and nepotism." The silence that followed was the longest of my life. Finally, Susan Park spoke. "I move that we accept Emma's conditions in principle, subject to legal review of the specific terms." "Second," David Thompson said immediately. Margaret nodded. "All in favor?" Every hand went up except my father's and Tyler's. "The motion carries," Margaret said. "Emma, please work with Madeline to draft the formal agreement. We will reconvene tomorrow morning to sign." My father stood up so abruptly his chair fell backwards. "This is not over," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You have turned my own board against me. You have destroyed this family." I looked at him, this man who had made me feel small and worthless for as long as I could remember, and I felt nothing but exhaustion. "I did not destroy anything, Father. I just stopped hiding the destruction that was already happening." He stormed out of the room, Tyler scrambling after him. The remaining board members gathered around me, asking questions, offering support, behaving as though I had always been a valued member of the team, rather than the invisible daughter who kept everything running behind the scenes. Margaret stayed after the others had left. "Emma," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I have served on this board for 15 years. I watched your father dismiss you time after time, and I never said anything. I should have." "Why did you not?" She sighed. "Because it is easier to go along. Because I told myself family dynamics were not my business. Because I was a coward." She met my eyes. "I will not make that mistake again." I nodded, accepting her words without fully forgiving them. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. After she left, I sat alone in the boardroom, looking out at the city lights beginning to sparkle in the early winter darkness. In 24 hours, my life had transformed completely. The invisible daughter had become the most powerful person in the room, but power had never been what I wanted. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be valued. I wanted to work hard and have that work recognized, not stolen or dismissed or attributed to someone less deserving. Now finally I had the chance to build something that belonged entirely to me. My phone buzzed. A text from Angela. "The federal inquiry notice arrived. They want to meet with you Monday morning." I typed back, "Tell them I will be there." Outside my window, the first stars were appearing in the winter sky. The same stars that had witnessed centuries of human ambition and heartbreak, triumph, and failure. Tomorrow, the real work will begin. The morning after the board meeting dawned gray and cold, the sky heavy with clouds. I arrived at Carter Logistics before 7, wanting to review the systems one more time before the formal agreements were signed. The building felt different now. Employees moved through the hallways with their heads down, uncertain what the new power structure would mean. The server room hummed around me as I ran final diagnostics. Everything was stable, waiting for authorization to return to full operation. My phone buzzed with a message from Madeline. I was typing a reply when the server room door opened behind me. Tyler stood in the doorway, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. He looked like he had not slept, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. "Congratulations," he said, dripping with sarcasm. "You finally got what you always wanted." What I wanted was to be treated with respect. That should not have required any of this. And he laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the server racks. "Respect. Do you want respect? You are destroying our family over respect." "I am not destroying anything. The evidence speaks for itself. You stole from this company, Tyler. You manipulated financial records. These are facts, not accusations." I was optimizing cash flow, managing tax liabilities, things you would not understand. "Is that what you will tell the federal investigators? That embezzlement is just creative accounting?" His face went red. "There will not be any federal investigators if you drop this. We can go back to how things were." How things were. You took credit for every system I built. You told everyone I was just IT support. You and Olivia conspired to have me publicly humiliated. That was just family stuff. Everyone does that. No, Tyler. Everyone does not do that. Normal families do not steal from each other. He took a step toward me, his hands clenched at his sides. "You self-righteous little fool, you think you are better than me? I think I have spent 7 years building the foundation this company stands on while you spent the same time tearing it down for personal profit. And I think the evidence supports my version of events, not yours." He stood there for a long moment, chest heaving before turning and storming out of the server room. I waited until I heard the elevator doors close before allowing myself to catch my breath. The board meeting that afternoon was shorter. The formal agreements were signed. Tyler was officially suspended. My father was stripped of most operational authority. As the sun began to set, my father appeared in the doorway. He looked older than I had ever seen him. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He sat across from me. "Emma, I need you to answer honestly. Did I do this? Did I create the circumstances that led to all of this?" "What do you mean?" "I favored Tyler. I told myself it was because he needed more support, but really I was just doing what my father did. Sons inherit, daughters marry. That does not make it right." "No, it does not." He was quiet for a long moment. "When Tyler started making mistakes, I covered for him. I signed off on expenses without looking closely. I was really just enabling him." "The fraud," I did not know the extent of it. I swear to you, Emma, I did not know he was stealing from the company. But I should have known. Instead, I trusted him because he was my son and dismissed you because you were my daughter." He broke down, then tears streaming down his face. "I cannot forgive you yet," I said quietly. "Maybe someday, but not yet." He nodded. "I understand. I have not earned forgiveness. What are you going to do?" He wiped his eyes. "I am going to cooperate with the investigation. I am going to tell the truth, and I am going to try to save what is left of this company, if only for the employees. That is a start." He paused at the door. "Emma, for what it is worth, I am proud of you. I should have told you that a long time ago." It was not enough, but it was something. The evening settled over Carter Logistics like a funeral shroud. One by one, the office lights blinked out as employees left for the day, leaving only the security team and a handful of executives still dealing with the crisis. I remained in the conference room surrounded by documents and laptops preparing for the federal meeting that would determine the company's future. Madeline had gone home to rest, but I could not bring myself to leave. There was something about being here in the building that contained so much of my life's work that felt necessary. Around 8 o'clock, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps, unsteady, accompanied by the faint smell of alcohol. Tyler appeared in the doorway again, but he was a different man than the one who had confronted me in the server room that morning. His suit was disheveled, his tie loosened, a bottle of whiskey clutched in one hand. "Came to say goodbye," he slurred, "to my office, my career, my life." "You should go home, Tyler. Olivia must be worried about you." He laughed bitterly. Olivia is packing, taking the kids to her mother's place, says she did not sign up to be married to a criminal." Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. Whatever Tyler had done watching his life unravel must have been devastating. "I am sorry," I said and meant it. "I never wanted it to end like this." "Liar." He stumbled to a chair and collapsed into it. "You have been waiting for this moment your whole life, the chance to destroy me." "That is not true." "No. Then why did you build those systems to track me? Why did you keep records of everything I did?" "I built those systems to protect the company. The fact that they also documented your fraud is not my fault." He took a long drink from the bottle. "You know what the funny thing is? I actually thought I was good at this, running a company, managing finances. Dad always told me I was destined for great things. He made me believe I was special." "You were special to him. That was never in doubt. But I was not special to reality was. Reality did not care that I was Raymond Carter's golden boy. Reality just kept track of what I actually did versus what I pretended to do." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "When did you figure it out that I was stealing?" "About 18 months ago. The patterns in the financial data started looking wrong. I built additional monitoring protocols to verify what I was seeing." "And you never said anything?" "I reported my concerns to the board twice. They dismissed me. Your father signed off on every irregular payment." Tyler shook his head slowly. "So everyone knew. Everyone was complicit. And I was just too arrogant to realize I was surrounded by a house of cards." We sat in silence for a while, two siblings who had spent their lives as adversaries finally reaching a moment of honesty. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "The federal team arrives Monday. They will review all the evidence. Depending on what they find, charges could be filed within weeks." "Will I go to prison?" "I do not know. That depends on how cooperative you are, how much you can demonstrate was driven by ignorance versus malice." He finished the last of his whiskey and set the empty bottle on the table. "I never hated you, you know. I was jealous of you." I blinked in surprise. "Jealous of me?" "You were always so smart, so capable. You could look at a problem and see solutions I could not even imagine. Dad pushed me to compete with you, to be better than you, but I knew I never could be. So instead, I tried to diminish you, make you seem less impressive. If I could not rise to your level, I would drag you down to mine." "That is the saddest thing you have ever said to me." He smiled weakly. "I know. I have been sad for a long time. I just hid it behind anger and ambition." He stood up unsteadily. I should go. Let you finish whatever conquering hero things you need to do. Tyler, I hesitated. Whatever happens with the investigation, I hope you find some peace. I hope we all do. He paused at the door. You know, Emma, you would have been a much better CEO than me. You would have been better at everything. I am sorry I wasted so many years trying to prove otherwise. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the weight of his confession. I stayed at the office until nearly midnight, working through the documentation, preparing for the battle ahead. When I finally emerged into the cold night air, the city was quiet. Most people asleep in their homes, unaware of the drama unfolding in the glass towers around them. My car was one of the few left in the parking garage. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened, everything that was yet to come. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Are you okay? I have been praying for you all day. I typed back, I am okay, tired but okay. We will talk tomorrow. The drive home was peaceful, the streets empty, the Christmas lights still glowing in storefronts and on houses. It occurred to me that this was the first Christmas season I could remember without the weight of family expectations crushing my spirit. I had lost something, certainly. The illusion of a loving family, the hope that my father might someday see me clearly. But I had gained something too: self-respect, independence, the knowledge that I could stand on my own, even when everyone I should have been able to count on had failed me. As I parked outside my apartment building, I noticed lights in my neighbor's window. An older couple dancing slowly in their living room, probably to music I could not hear. They looked happy, content, comfortable in each other's presence after what must have been decades together. That was what I wanted, I realized. Not revenge, not power, not even recognition. I wanted to build a life where I could be myself fully and completely without having to hide or diminish or apologize for my capabilities. Tomorrow would bring the federal meeting, more confrontations, more difficult conversations. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel hope. The worst was over. The rebuilding could finally begin. 8:58 in the evening. I sat alone in my apartment watching the final countdown on my laptop screen. Operating capacity. Remaining 2 hours, 01 minutes. In just over 2 hours, the systems I had built would shift from restricted mode to full shutdown, and Carter Logistics would face a choice: accept my terms or watch everything fall apart. The snow had started falling again. Big fat flakes that caught the light from street lamps and holiday decorations before settling on cars and sidewalks below. It was beautiful in a way that felt almost cruel, nature's indifference to human drama playing out in crystalline white. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts and calls from my father, from board members, from employees who had somehow gotten my personal number. All of them asking the same thing. Would I restore the systems? Would I save the company? The question assumed I had the power to save or destroy at will. In a sense, I did. But the situation was far more complex than anyone seemed to understand. I had not created this crisis. Tyler's fraud and my father's negligence had created it. The expired license and frozen systems were just the mechanism that brought everything into the open. Even if I restored full access tonight, the federal investigation would proceed. The evidence of wrongdoing would still exist. The damage to the company's reputation would still need to be addressed. What I could do was determine how the crisis was handled. Whether the company collapsed in chaos or survived through careful restructuring depended largely on decisions made in the next few hours. At 9:30, I received a video call request from Margaret. She appeared on my screen looking more exhausted than I had ever seen her. Behind her, I could see the boardroom at Carter Logistics filled with people who were supposed to be enjoying their holidays. Emma, thank you for taking my call. I know this has been an incredibly difficult time. What is the situation? The warehouse temperature controls are failing. If we do not restore the climate systems within the next few hours, we will lose approximately $3 million in temperature-sensitive inventory. The warehouse teams are fighting the collapse by hand, desperate to save the inventory. And Tyler, my father? Tyler has been taken to a hospital. Apparently, he showed up at the office earlier this evening in a state of extreme intoxication and had to be sedated. Your father is here with us, but he has not spoken a word in hours. I absorbed this information. My brother was in the hospital. My father had retreated into silence. The company was on the verge of losing millions, and I was the only person who could prevent the disaster from getting worse. What exactly are you asking me to do, Margaret? Come to the office, restore the systems, help us navigate through this crisis. Under what terms? She hesitated. The terms you proposed at yesterday's meeting: full audit, executive restructuring, formal acknowledgement of your contributions. And the federal investigation? We will cooperate fully. Whatever happens, we will face it honestly. I looked at the countdown timer. Just under 90 minutes until full shutdown. I will be there in 30 minutes. The drive to Carter Logistics felt surreal, the empty streets giving way to the brightly lit office building that had been the center of my life for so many years. Security guards nodded as I entered, their expressions a mixture of relief and uncertainty. The boardroom was crowded when I arrived. Board members, department heads, a handful of lawyers I did not recognize, and in the corner, my father sitting alone, staring at nothing. I took my place at the head of the table and opened my laptop. Before I do anything, I need to make something clear. My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. What happens tonight does not change what has already happened. Tyler committed fraud. The evidence is documented and will be shared with federal investigators. Those consequences cannot be avoided. Murmurs rippled through the room. What I can do is restore the operational systems, preventing immediate financial damage and giving the company time to restructure properly. But I will only do this if everyone in this room understands and accepts the terms. I outlined the conditions again: the audit, the executive changes, the acknowledgement of my role, the commitment to transparency. One by one, the board members nodded their agreement. The lawyers conferred and approved. Even my father, roused from his stupor, managed a barely perceptible nod. Then let us begin. I pulled up the system administration panel and began entering the authorization codes that would bring everything back online. The process was not instantaneous. Years of security protocols meant each system had to be restored individually, verified, and tested. The warehouse climate controls came first. Temperature readings immediately began dropping towards safe levels. The fleet management system followed GPS and routing algorithms flickering back to life. Security systems, communication networks, payment processing. One by one, the pieces of Carter Logistics reconnected like a patient waking from a coma. By midnight, the immediate crisis was over. The inventory was saved. The systems were operational. The company would survive to face its federal investigation. Margaret shook my hand, her grip firm and grateful. Thank you, Emma. I know this could not have been easy. It was not easy, but it was necessary. What happens now? With your role in the company? I looked around the room at the faces of people who had ignored me, dismissed me, benefited from my work without ever acknowledging it. Some of them were looking at me differently now, with respect perhaps, or at least recognition. I will honor my commitment to assist with the transition, I said. After that, I will be leaving Carter Logistics. Leaving? But you just proved how essential you are. Exactly. I proved that I can build successful systems and lead through crises. Now I am going to prove I can do it somewhere that actually values my contributions. My father approached as the others began filing out. He looked smaller than I remembered, as if the events of the past few days had physically diminished him. Emma, he said quietly, I do not know how to thank you. You could start by apologizing for 32 years of treating me like I did not matter. He flinched. You are right. I should have said this a long time ago. I am sorry. For everything. I hear you, I said, but hearing is not the same as forgiving. That will take time. I understand. He paused. For what it is worth, I never stopped loving you. I did not know how to show it. To anyone, really. Your mother, you, even Tyler in my own damaged way. Love without respect is not love, Father. It is possession. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth of my words. I am going home, I said. We will talk more in the coming weeks, but tonight I need to rest. I walked out of the building into the cold December air. The snow had stopped falling, and the sky was clearing, revealing stars that sparkled like promises. My phone buzzed with a text from Madeline. You did good tonight. Now get some sleep. The real work starts tomorrow. She was right. Tonight was about crisis management. Tomorrow will be about building something new. But for this moment, walking through the quiet streets, with the weight of a lifetime finally lifting from my shoulders, I allowed myself to feel something I had not felt in years: hope. The days following the system restoration blurred together in a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and difficult conversations. The federal team arrived on Monday as scheduled. I cooperated fully, providing them with access to every system log, every transaction record, every piece of evidence. It was accountability. Tyler was released from the hospital and placed under legal restriction. I heard through Angela that Olivia had indeed left him. The Golden Boy's life was crumbling. My father attended every meeting, answering questions with a defeated honesty. Whether his cooperation would be enough to save him remained unclear, but at least he was facing the consequences. 1 week after the Christmas crisis, Margaret called me into her office. The board has reached a decision, she said. We would like to offer you the position of Chief Operating Officer. Your salary would be 3 times what you have ever earned from your licensing agreements. It is practical. You built these systems. The company needs you. A month ago, the company did not know I existed. We failed you, Emma, but we are trying to do better. I will accept the position, I said, but I have conditions. We agreed eCarter Systems remains independent. I have full authority over technical operations, and a scholarship program in my mother's name will be established. The next month was consumed by transition. My father stepped down as CEO. The man who replaced him was an outsider chosen specifically for his reputation for ethical leadership. On my 33rd birthday, 6 weeks after the Christmas crisis, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My mother stood in the doorway looking nervous and hopeful. May I come in? I stood and hugged her, something I had not done in years. She felt fragile in my arms. I wanted to bring you this, she said, handing me a small wrapped package. It is nothing special, just something I thought you should have. Inside, I found a worn floppy disk and a printout of an old piece of code yellowed with age. I was cleaning out the attic and found the old box of your childhood computer things, my mother said. I found this. It's the first program you ever wrote on my old word processor. You taught yourself. I knew then that you were going to be something special. Why did you never show me this? She looked down at her hands. Because your father said I was being foolish. He said computer skills were not important for a girl. I should have fought for you, Emma. I should have stood up to him. I am so sorry I did not. You were as trapped as I was, I said gently, but it helps me understand it. We talked for over an hour that afternoon, building the relationship we should have had all along. When she finally left, I sat at my desk looking at that old printout. The little girl in the picture had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but there was a determination in her eyes that had carried through all the difficult years. That evening, I drove to the smaller house where my mother now lived alone. We cooked dinner together for the first time in years. Do you regret it? I asked. Marrying him. I regret not being stronger. I regret teaching you through my silence that women should accept being overlooked. But I do not regret you. Even though I destroyed the family, Emma, she took my hand. You did not destroy anything. You saved a company from fraud. You forced accountability. I am proud of you. I should have told you that every day of your life. I stayed at her house that night, sleeping in my old childhood room. In the morning, I woke to the sound of birds and the smell of coffee. The winter sun was streaming through the windows. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I felt like I was home. 6 months had passed since Christmas that changed everything. I stood at the window of my new apartment watching the late spring rain wash the city clean. The view was different from my old place higher up, looking out over a park that was just beginning to bloom with the green promises of summer. So much had changed in half a year. Tyler had pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and was currently awaiting sentencing. The prosecutors were recommending prison time, though his lawyers were arguing for a reduced sentence based on his cooperation. I had not spoken to him since that night in the conference room when he had confessed his jealousy. My father had avoided criminal charges, but had agreed to step back from all business activities as part of a settlement with federal regulators. He had also surprisingly begun attending therapy, something I never thought I would see from a man who had spent his life believing he was always right. Carter Logistics was thriving under new leadership. The company I had nearly destroyed had instead been transformed, its toxic culture replaced with something healthier, its systems optimized and secure. My role as COO had evolved into something more like chief architect, designing the frameworks that would support the company for decades to come. But the most important changes had happened inside me. I had learned to set boundaries, to say no without guilt, to accept recognition without immediately deflecting it to others, to trust that my contributions had value regardless of what anyone else thought. The scholarship program in my mother's name had already provided funding for 12 students. Watching their parents receive the news, tears of joy and disbelief that someone was investing in their children's futures had been one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. My mother and I meet for lunch every week now. We were building the relationship we should have had all along, one conversation at a time. She had started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other women find the strength to leave difficult situations. It was her way of making up for the years she had stayed silent. On a Saturday in June, I received an email from Tyler's lawyer. He was requesting permission for Tyler to write to me. The decision was mine. I could refuse, and no one would blame me. I thought about it for 3 days before responding. He may write. I will decide whether to respond after reading what he has to say. The letter arrived a week later. It was handwritten, which surprised me. Tyler had never been one for personal touches. Dear Emma, it began, I have been in this facility for 4 months now, and I have had a lot of time to think. Too much time, probably. But for the first time in my life, I do not have anyone to impress or any image to maintain. I am just me, whoever that is. I want you to know that I understand now. What you did at Christmas was not about revenge or destruction. It was about forcing all of us, me especially, to face the truth. I was a fraud. Not just in the financial sense, though, that too. I was a fraud as a brother, as a son, as a person. I do not expect your forgiveness. I have not earned it. But I want you to know that watching your strength during these past months has taught me more about integrity than anything Dad ever said. I hope one day we can talk, not as the people we used to be, but as whoever we are becoming. Your brother Tyler. I read the letter 3 times before setting it aside. Forgiveness, I had learned, was not a single decision. It was a process, sometimes moving forward and sometimes sliding back. There would be days when I felt ready to let go of the past, and days when old wounds would ache like fresh injuries. But the anger that had consumed me for so long had begun to fade. In its place was something more complicated, a recognition that everyone in my family, including me, had been shaped by forces beyond our control. We had all been playing roles assigned by generations of Carter men who believed in hierarchies and inherited worth. Breaking those patterns had required burning everything down. But from the ashes, something new was growing. On the anniversary of that Christmas Eve, when I had been banned from my family's celebration, I hosted a dinner party at my apartment. The guest list was small but meaningful. My mother, Margaret Chen Angela, from accounting Madeline, and a few colleagues who had become genuine friends over the preceding months. We ate and drank and laughed together, sharing stories and dreams and the kind of honest conversation that I had always craved but rarely found. Outside my window, the city sparkled with lights, and somewhere in the distance, carolers were already beginning to rehearse for the holiday season. My mother raised her glass. To Emma, for showing all of us what it means to be strong. And kind, Angela added. Do not forget kindness. Plenty of people would have burned that company to the ground. You found a way to save it." "I did not save anything," I said. "I just stopped protecting people from the consequences of their own choices." "Sometimes that is the bravest thing you can do," Madeline observed. After the guests had gone and I was cleaning up alone in my quiet apartment, I found myself thinking about the journey that had brought me here. All the years of feeling invisible, the slow accumulation of slights and dismissals, the moment when I finally decided that enough was enough. I had not set out to become a hero or a villain. I had simply stopped accepting the role of victim. The rest had followed naturally. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. When I opened it, I found a photograph of 2 children building a snowman. Beneath it, a message from Olivia. "The kids ask about their Aunt Emma sometimes. Maybe next year, if you are willing, they could visit. No pressure. Just know that you have a family who wants to know you." I stared at the message for a long time. The road ahead was not clear. Relationships damaged over decades do not heal overnight, and some might never fully mend. But the door that had been slammed in my face on Christmas Eve was opening again, slowly, cautiously. This time I would walk through it on my own terms. I typed a reply, "I would like that. Let me know when." Then I turned off the lights and went to bed ready to dream of summers yet to come. The story of that Christmas when my family banned me and I responded by showing them who really owned everything they valued, that story was ending. But my story, the one I was writing for myself, was just beginning. And for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the pen. If you have ever felt invisible, ever been dismissed or underestimated, ever wondered if anyone would notice if you simply stopped carrying the burden others placed on you, I hope my experience gives you courage. You do not have to destroy the people who hurt you. You do not have to seek revenge or burn bridges or turn your pain into weapons. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop protecting others from the consequences of their own choices. Sometimes the strongest form of justice is allowing the truth to speak for itself. And sometimes the family that banned you becomes the family that learns to see you clearly if you give them the chance and if they prove they have earned it. Share your story in the comments below. I rate